The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. I'm here every Friday at 3 o'clock, and sometimes other times, if you need to reach me, best number is 631-647-4694. When we talk about our code, we talk about choice, organization, direction, and education. And we help hundreds of advisors across the United States with anything from life insurance, disability, long-term care, annuities, and life settlements. And we do some little estate planning. We do it with estate attorneys and CPAs, and we like to coordinate your plans. And if you don't have team members to help you, let us be part of your team, or let us help coordinate a team for you so that we can take care of your needs. I talk a lot about change because change is inevitable. Growth is optional. And one of the changes that's going on right now in my industry dramatically, which affects every small business and everybody working out there, is the subsidies for Obamacare, or was really PPACA, have gone away, which causes a rise in price, all health plans, and it's forcing people to look at, let's say, non-traditional coverage. So we've worked with a number of companies to develop some non-traditional options to the traditional big players out there. And if you're an employer and you have employees, and even if they're on the Obama plan or they're not on the Obama plan and you're helping, you realize it's one of the biggest cost factors you have. And you need to adjust this to survive. And everybody, it's everybody's biggest concern is their health. I got to have coverage. And the prices have gotten way, way out of control. And so if you have a question and you need some unique solutions, give us a call, because we're working very diligently behind the scenes, because we know the change is here. So you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Saving money on your expenses is like putting money in your pocket, but also you have to survive, and your companies have to survive. So I know it's a very big expense next to payroll. Now, I read an article this week from Morningstar. If anybody knows, Morningstar is a rating agency, but they also have some publications they put out. And the article was called Living Well, Financial Stress and Longevity. So here's some of the statistics for retirement readiness for most Americans. 26% of all households are projected to run out of money in retirement. That's 1 out of 4 households. When you factor in long-term care costs, that grows to 41%. Now we're getting close to half. For a single woman, that number is 52%. Running out of money and needing long-term care, 52% run out of money. So long-term care might be the most significant, and I believe is the most significant risk in retirement. and this is from them, the risk is not inflation, it's not market volatility, or how much cash you have on hand. It's the cost of providing long-term care for declining health. This is right out of this is not an insurance magazine. This is real life. So, it's not a nice to have conversation, but it's one that's necessary. You have to have this conversation because at the end of the day, the costs of long-term care will devastate your plans as a person, as a family. It's the biggest gap that most people have. The nice thing is there are solutions. With proper planning, we have long-term care policies, traditional policies. We have these hybrid policies, which have life insurance with long-term care. We have annuities that can give you a guaranteed income for as long as you live. So you don't run out of money, you don't run out of income. That's a big deal. And a lot of these solutions have major, major tax advantages. And that's something you may not be figuring down the road. The government has told us for years, when you retire, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. One of the biggest myths of all time. Okay, as we get closer to retirement, I'm going to tell you, most retirees I know are in a higher tax bracket. And with the way the debt is today, I feel the tax brackets will be even worse in the future. So think about that. Most taxes are paid at retirement because people have planned properly maybe, and they put all their money into IRAs or 401ks, which is all taxable. And people say, well, I'm not making as much in retirement, but I got to withdraw all that money to pay for my bills that I've accumulated, and it's all taxable. You didn't think about that. So you want to be tax efficient in what you do, and planning for long-term care makes you very tax efficient. Any benefits you get out of a long-term care policy, by the way, are tax-free. Very important. Last week I talked about transferring maybe a high cash value policy you bought many, many years ago into a long-term care policy. Or you can do it with an annuity. You can take an annuity in some cases and transfer it into a long-term care annuity. They don't quite have them in New York, but they do outside. And what that does is, despite the growth, if you have to use it for your benefit, and I say annuity because the annuities outside New York don't require medical underwriting, which is a big deal. But the benefits come out tax-free. That's the big deal. People can say, well, I'm earning more in the stock market, but eventually they start to pay tax on it, and that taxes eats into your growth. As a matter of fact, if you retired today with $1 million in your 401k, every penny you take out is taxable, maybe as high as 40%. So what's the real net worth of that 401k? Maybe you get $400,000 or $600,000 of benefit. But I saved $1 million. Where did it all go? Well, give your Uncle Sam a call because a lot of it went there. Now, if you are in a tax-free environment, maybe a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k or life insurance, that $1 million is real money. So maybe you earned a little less in one of those vehicles, but when you factor in taxes, oh my goodness, tax-free down the road. So these all things come into play, and everybody's plan is different. Everybody's needs are different. There's no cookie-cutter approach, and I've seen a lot of cookie-cutter approaches out there. Everybody has a unique situation that requires unique solutions. And everybody's health is different. Don't wait until you're where you're not healthy or you're, much older and saying, oh yeah, my house is going to go on fire next week. Let me buy that insurance you talked about, Neil. And we get this all the time. We'll talk about it in your 40s. We talk about it in your 50s. We talk about it in your 60s. We talk about it in your 70s. And one day you'll wake up and say, oh, boy, I wish I listened to him 20 years ago. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. I'll be right back after a short break. Thank you. Welcome back to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein, and great to have you with me here today. One of my callers from last week, we sat down and talked, and they listened to the show, and they said, well, they had an old life insurance policy that built up cash, and their advisor said, oh, take that, and you don't need it anymore. Just throw it into a long-term care policy. Which on its surface was good advice and kind of what I said last week. However, not all advice is for all people. In her case, she doesn't have to pay for this policy. She got it through a lawsuit or something, and it's being paid for. It's free money to her children. And basically, my advice was that policy needs to be moved inside a trust, so it goes tax-free to your children. Sitting the way it is, like most people have, where, maybe a child or a spouse is a beneficiary, adds to your estate, and people don't realize that it's part of your estate. And this is part of her estate. So now we're just going to take that off the table and move it over into a life insurance trust. And she already sat with an estate attorney, very good estate attorney, actually has a radio show here. And that was his advice, which I like. So I said, no. But then we looked at the other assets, and she'd done a great job in saving and a lot of retirement assets. And if you listen to my show before, those are the worst assets to leave behind. Because not only could they be subject to estate tax, they're also subject to income tax. And basically, with the new Secure Act 2.0, her children would have to take out all that money in a 10-year lifespan. So if, let's say, they were doing extremely well, or let's say they were doing not so well and they were in a 15% bracket, and all of a sudden you added a lump sum of money every year for 10 years, all of a sudden you're putting them in a much higher tax bracket, including their earnings, because it all gets lumped into their earnings every year. So you could really upset their taxes so that they're actually net making less money because you gave them money. So they're making less money at their job because more is coming out in taxes. It's kind of crazy. So my recommendation was, in this situation, like I said, everybody's a different situation, and there was other assets there. Let's put a spending plan on those retirement assets. Let's start it now. Let's not keep deferring. Let's start spending it. And with that money, let's buy a really good long-term care policy so you don't have to worry. She thought that was a good idea. Now, your typical advisor that recommended this to her, who doesn't understand all the insurance policies and everything like I do, would said, oh, take the money from your existing life policy and just transfer it over into a long-term care policy. Well, that wasn't going to be enough or adequate for her situation at all. And it was an easy way out. It was not the right way out. If you're not paying for something, this is a valuable asset, put it away, stockpile it. Use up some of the other retirement money that you're not using and secure it on another end. Now, if she needed more life insurance, we could incorporate the long-term care planning in that. But there's all kinds of ways of doing it, and you want to dissect. Like I said, everybody's situation is different. You want to dissect assets differently for different people's different situations. So that's a big thing. We also had a meeting. I didn't have a meeting. This wasn't with a client, but I had a meeting with some accountants and attorneys where I have monthly meetings that I put on, and they talk about some great things. One of the things they were talking about was this new, an old code section. They did a whole meeting on this code section about selling your business and doing it in a tax-efficient way where it could save you millions of dollars. And there's a whole code section around it, and it involves you issuing shares of stock and selling the stock, and there's a whole way of deferring taxes. Very important type of thing. But what if you have a building or a business that you bought, and it's a rental property, and it's appreciated quite a bit? Well, a lot of financial advisors will talk about doing a 1031 exchange. And all that does is delay your taxes. But what it does is you could take that real value of that rental property or business and make an exchange and buy another one, or buy, like a lot of these people use these Delaware statutory trusts, which will create an income for you and do a great thing, and where you won't have to pay exorbitant taxes. Or there's another solution called a charitable remainder trust that I like, where you actually donate your property or your stock to a charity, and the charity sells it in a 0% tax bracket. You get some deductions for that, but they only keep what is called a remainder interest in that sale. So you get to take an income from that growth, a lifetime income. The charity gets a remaining interest in that sale. However, that income can be replaced with a tax-free, what we call a wealth replacement trust, inside a life insurance policy, inside a trust. So there's a lot of moving parts, very complicated. This is what the high net worth people do, and you may not be apprised of it. The everyday Joes don't talk about these kind of things, but you have to be creative and do the right thing. Listen, the people that have money in this society are creative, or they have creative advisors, or they understand that their biggest partner is the IRS. And you might like paying taxes and, allowing the government to do what they do. And some people, they don't mind paying taxes. Most people, they don't mind paying taxes, but at the end of the day, they want to make sure they get something for it. And you can control how much taxes you pay by being tax efficient, or when you pay taxes. Now, after you're gone, you have no control. You're not up, no control. But you know what? Before you go, you really have a choice. Do I want to leave my legacy to the government to decide what to do, or to my family, or to my church or synagogue or some other nice nonprofit situation, or a foundation? How do you want to be remembered? Now, after you're gone, you have no choices. Prior, you have plenty of choices, but you need to plan for it. And that's what we do. So in life insurance planning and annuity planning, in long-term care planning, all these things come into play to be tax efficient for your retirement and to protect your assets so that you can move them on to the next generation. That's a summation of the bulk of the work we do. Now, we do regular life insurance, this and that. One other thing comes to mind that I do want to talk about that's happening today. We've talked in the past about AI and everything else. A lot of insurance companies today are not even issuing real policies. They email them to you. Let me tell you how detrimental that is. I like to have the paper and have it in a file and know where it's at. If you're getting emailed a policy and something happens, somebody's got to go through your email and find that policy. So think about that, because that policy is an implement that everybody searches for when you're gone. And if it's sitting in an email somewhere, you'll never know it exists. So print your policy out, have your advisor print your policy out, put it in a safe place, make sure your attorneys know where it is, make sure your family knows where it is. Very important document. Must keep it on file. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. I'm here every Friday at 3. Best way to reach me is 631-647-4694. You can visit me at themainstreetcode.com. Catch me on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.